One of, if not the most common question I see asked relating to retirement planning is how much am I going to need to retire? What should my retirement income be looking like? While it's easy to give the answer of it depends on your lifestyle, wants and needs during retirement, I sympathise with people asking this because one, it's not quite that simple, and two, going from working to retiring is a huge shift. Yes, you may have a consistent level of expenditure now, but of course this is going to change once you're retired. So whilst yes, it will of course depend on a number of circumstances, in this video I'm going to be running through a number of interesting studies to present you the average retiree income in the UK, with the hopes that, if nothing else, it can give you a bit more of a baseline and expectation to work off for yourself. So let's start here. According to the latest government data as of 2023, the average weekly pension income overall in the UK is £387, or £20,124 a year. For couples, the average was £561 a week, or £29,172 a year. And for single pensioners, it was £267 for £13,884 a year. Now, how we interpret this data is really important in order for it to give us any value at all. So the first big thing to note here is that these figures are net of any tax, and interestingly, are also net of any housing costs. So the data here has purposely excluded the cost of housing, regardless of whether you own your house, are renting, or are somewhere in between, which gives us a bit of a cleaner figure for disposable income averages in retirement. But of course, for your sake, and when you use this data to help create a baseline, make sure you're factoring in your housing costs and tax. You'd also want to factor in annual inflation between 2023 and 2024, but for simplicity's sake, let's leave that for now while we dig into this further. We can also see that in this study, older pensioners have a lower average income in general, with over 75s having £356 of weekly income compared to £428 from under 75s. This isn't hugely surprising. Younger pensioners tend to have more likelihood of supplementing their pension with active part-time or ad hoc work, which pushes their averages up a fair bit. In addition, without proper financial planning in place, as many pensioners get older, their private pension will be depleted to an extent that in many cases makes them far more heavily reliant on the state pension for their sole source of income. Regional impacts, of course, also play a role in the average retiree income. You can see here that the average weekly income for couples, unsurprisingly, is highest for Londoners and those in the southeast. Interestingly though, when you look at single pensioners, this isn't the case, with Wales and the east of England having the highest average income. This might be a product of the study excluding housing payments. I imagine in many cases in the high housing cost areas in London and the southeast, they represent such a high percentage of retirees' income for a single person that the net income remaining suffers quite significantly. But I'm sure there are many other factors that play a part here too. I just want to pause for a moment here and add an important caveat. We're looking at the average retiree income here, and while I do think it's really beneficial to look at studies like this, it's important to note that the incomes you're seeing here don't necessarily reflect an income that is sustainable throughout retirement. What I mean by this, and what is supported by the decrease in income from over 75s that we discussed earlier, is that your private pension pot, ISA, savings, whatever assets you're using to fund your retirement in excess of the state pension, may not necessarily support this level of income throughout the entirety of retirement. And the chances are, a lot of the people from this study are also not drawing down from these assets in a way that will be fully sustainable for the entirety of their retired life. So it's always worth keeping that in mind when piecing together what sort of income you expect to achieve in retirement. But that's a video for another time. So we've covered what the average retiree income is, but how does this average translate into living standards? Because this is what will really drive how much you're wanting to take home each year. The Retirement Living Standards performed a study where they conclude that there are 3 levels of expenditure and related standard of living to help savers understand how much money they will need to live lifestyles that they want in retirement.
I think that I've got more than a minimum. Definitely, yeah.
That looks about right, really.
And that's in retirement. It makes me feel even more nervous.
They actually seem quite low.
I need to win the lottery.
Well, I mean, the first one is pretty low, but moderate and comfortable. Okay.
Each standard is based around a basket of goods and services and also takes into account different circumstances. You know, living inside or outside of London, being single, being a couple, etc. As you can see, a minimum, moderate and comfortable figure has been provided for both single and couples in and outside of London. These are 2024 figures, so if we take our 2023 average retiree incomes for single and couples and increase it by approximately 2% for inflation, we arrive at a figure of £29,755 for couples and £14,162 for single individuals. As you can see, a couple's income based on this verges just shy of a moderate living standard, but single individuals are short of meeting even the minimum standard, which is concerning. I will say, however, to take this with a pinch of salt. What is included versus excluded in the retirement living standard calculation isn't as exhaustive as I would have liked, so comparing an average from one study to figures from another will inherently cause some level of inaccuracy with our conclusions. But a helpful study nonetheless, and two studies that you can, in isolation, take to create a baseline of both an average income and what you should be trying to achieve. My favourite comparison to do here though is between our average retiree disposable income and how much disposable income the average worker has. This gives us a pretty solid baseline, especially if we're recently transitioning from work and life. Average UK pre-tax earnings is £35,880 annually, according to government data from August 2024. After income tax, national insurance and 5% pension contributions a month, which is the recommended minimum, this reduces to £28,404. On the face of it, this is over double the average single pensioner's income of £13,884. However, this does not factor in the big expense of housing costs and utilities, which our retiree average does. The average UK mortgage payment is £1,293 a month or £15,516 per year, according to the Office of National Statistics. So subtracting this from the £28,404 leaves us with £12,888, a very similar figure to our single retiree's average income. So to summarise, when applying inflation to 2023 figures, an average retiree income of £29,755 for couples and £14,162 is what we're looking at. This is net of tax and net of housing related costs, so it does really represent disposable income. This seems to provide a very livable yet modest standard of living, in line with an average UK worker's net income. So that's how I'd use this data, as a benchmark to see how you compare, and if you know you either won't be able to emulate this level of income or you want to have far more income based on lifestyle wants and needs, then making alternative tweaks to your plan to either increase your income or reduce your expenditure will likely be needed to various extents. One way this can be done with very minimal effort is just being as tax efficient as possible when you're drawing down your pension. I've made a video that I think will really help a lot of you out with this, and it's so simple but so effective. So please consider giving it a watch. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.